Majority of people always think resource-based policies actually give resources permissions. But I want to explain to you what a resource-based policy is all about. A resource-based policy is just a policy that is attached to a resource other than an identity. There are some AWS services that make use of resource-based policies. Not all AWS services make use of resource-based policies. For example, we have S3, we have SQS, we have Lambda, we have SNS, which are examples of resources that make use of resource-based policies. Let's say, for example, you have an S3 bucket, and that S3 bucket actually is the resource in this scenario. And let's say you have an IAM user in your account called John. One thing you could do is you would attach an identity-based policy to the user called John, and this identity-based policy attached to this user called John could give John permissions to be able to make calls to this bucket. Resource-based policies are almost the same thing, but this is what happens. A resource-based policy actually is one way of giving John permissions to the bucket. So when you attach a resource-based policy to a resource, it doesn't give the resource permissions, but instead it gives other principals permissions or denies other principals for making calls to that resource that the policy is attached to. So let's say, for example, in this scenario, there is no identity-based policy attached to the user called John. Now, what you could do is, you can simply have a resource-based policy attached to this S3 bucket, and this resource-based policy is going to have an effect, which would be an allow, and it could actually have an action, which could be the API calls which are allowing the identity or the principal to be able to perform. And also, you could have the principal. So you're going to hear about the principal in the resource-based policy. When we talk about the principal is nothing but the identities or the other resources whom you are allowing to be able to perform the actions on that particular resource that the resource-based policy is attached to. So in this case, it's going to be the IAM user called John. That means that John, who is an IAM user, is allowed to be able to perform those actions you specify in this resource-based policy. So, a resource-based policy is one other way of allowing identities and other principals, you're giving them or allowing them to be able to make calls to the resource that the policy is attached to. That holds the same to an SQS queue that you could have in your AWS account. That holds the same to a Lambda function that you could have in your AWS account. That holds the same to other resources like SNS, which all make use of resource-based policies. So the difference between a resource-based policy and an identity-based policy is that an identity-based policy is attached to an identity, and it gives the identity permissions but denies the identity for making calls to a particular service or to a particular resource. A resource-based policy actually is attached to the resource and it allows or denies other principals from performing other actions on the resource itself. So a resource-based policy is going to have a principal in its statement, whereas an identity-based policy is not going to have a principal in its policy statement.